Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Speed Mooting Partners in Crime podcast. On today's episode, Hayley and I were talking all about pupillage interviews. Of course, the pupillage gateway closed recently, and so the next stage for most people will be the interview stage. So in today's episode, we spent a considerable amount of time sharing some of our top tips for interviews. It was a fun episode, we enjoyed recording it, and we hope you enjoy listening. Welcome to the podcast. We are live.
Hi everyone.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Hayley.
And this is the Speed Mooting Partners in Crime podcast.
Episode 47? 46?
46.
Are you sure? I thought it was 46 last week.
Well, no. We tried to, if you recall, we tried to record episode 46.
That's why it's in my brain.
This is the second week in a row where we've had to basically do two recordings. So last week, we were divvies and left the microphones off.
Yep.
This week, we thought, oh, well, let's be proactive. Let's record it on one of my lunch breaks while I'm in court. Lo and behold, I'm in a Victorian building which has the worst Wi-Fi in the world. So every time you go into a conference room, and I literally tried so many conference rooms.
You did. You were walking all over the court, weren't you, trying to get it done?
It just wasn't happening. So that's why you thought you've recorded this before.
Yes.
But yeah, it was just not happening for us. So this is the real one. This is the live one. This is the proper episode 46.
Yep.
So let's start by naming the episode. So obviously I've discussed this with you previously, Hayley. Today we're in the motor racing world again, but it's not Formula 1 this time. But it's someone he's famous.
Did we get this far when
we named
fake
him.
recorded it? Okay.
Yeah, we named him because you went, oh yeah, I recognise that name. So I think most people would recognise the name even if you're not really into it. So
he was a motorbike racer.
Yeah, so MotoGP. So I think he's got the record. So he's like, this guy's like the Hamilton or the Schumacher of MotoGP. Okay. 7 MotoGP World Championships and then 2 World Championships in Moto2 or whatever it's called. So 9 World Championships total.
I can't remember his name.
Okay. His nickname, the Doctor.
No, it doesn't help me.
Yeah, it's not nothing linked to his name at all. It's the one and only Valentino Rossi.
Valentino Rossi.
So Valentino Rossi. So yeah, he's as I say, like the Michael Schumacher of motorbike racing. And I'm not a massive MotoGP fan, but yeah, I used to watch some of the races back in the day, and he was always good. I remember watching one of his last seasons before he retired when he was going for the World Championship, and he kind of knackered himself up a little bit because he got a penalty for kicking someone else on their bike the race before. So, but yeah, no, he was very good. As I say, I'm not really an aficionado to say, how good someone was, or whatever. But the records speak for themselves, and he's off in doing car racing now.
Okay.
So I think he drives for BMW in the World Endurance Championships. There were rumours years ago, of him coming to Formula 1. So he's done a few. He's definitely driven Hamilton's Mercedes, and he did a test with Ferrari years ago, and apparently he wasn't that far behind Kimi Räikkönen in terms of lap time. So,
wow.
Yeah, but it just never came to be.
Speaking of Formula 1 rumours, do you know who's rumoured to be coming back?
Do tell.
Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, that would be good.
Is he your favourite?
I would say he's my favourite.
Between him and Michael Schumacher.
Yeah. It's a tough one, that, because I remember kind of when he started getting into his stride with Ferrari, and particularly 2017, when I think him and Hamilton were both tied on 4 World Championships, and Ferrari had a good car at the start of that year. He was top of the World Championship. I was thinking, oof, he could go on and break Schumacher's records here. I don't know if I'm happy about this or not. But it just was never to be. Ferrari just couldn't maintain a good car for a whole season. So 17 and 18, Vettel started the season off well. He was winning the World Championship, and then halfway through, Ferrari just couldn't be bothered, and the Mercedes did continue to develop. But yes, that'll be interesting.
We'll see. Watch this space.
We'll see.
Anyway,
let's stop talking cars and bikes and all the rest of it. Let's talk law. That's why we're here.
That's why we are here.
Motorbike and car podcast, much as I would like it to be. We're recording this, it's Thursday evening, so it's another kind of late one because I'm still in the middle of this trial. It's a trial that just
Won't end.
Won't end. We were listed for 2 weeks. Yeah, we've gone beyond.
Yes.
Well, not quite, but
You're going to.
We're going to.
There's no way you're finishing tomorrow on Friday.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
So yeah, we're doing this Thursday evening. We're going to keep it relatively short without compromising the content. We've got one really good segment, which is all we'll be doing tonight.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to edit it tonight. Mm-hmm. Because we have a rule, don't we, at Speed Mooting?
Yeah.
We do not work on our birthdays.
We do not work on our birthday. No one in the Speed Mooting team ever works on the birthday.
If Speed Mooting ever rose up to power, that would be our first law, wouldn't it? Birthdays are off.
It might do, yeah. I don't know if that's the first law I would make, but
well, one of the first ones.
Yeah, one of the first ones. Yeah, give everyone their birthday off.
Yes. So tomorrow is my birthday, Valentine's Day, birthday, and then the 15th is the anniversary of our very first date.
It is indeed.
So John is a lucky guy. He gets 3 in 1.
3 in 1. Yeah, and then it's all the big days from there, isn't it? You got your Mother's Day, your Father's Day, and
your brother's wedding's coming up.
Brother's wedding coming up.
Then we're going to Italy. We're going to Italy. Italy for their wedding part 2.
Yeah.
Then we're squeezing in a Tenerife break somewhere, aren't we?
Yeah, cheeky little Tenerife break later on.
Yeah, and then is it our wedding then, or is what's before our wedding? No, America.
We'll probably go to the States at some point, won't we?
Yeah, we're planning a trip to Texas.
Yeah.
And then it's our wedding.
Then our wedding. Then Mexico.
Then Mexico for the honeymoon. But we do have a few big events coming up at Speed Mooting within that time frame.
That we do.
So the next one is the National Speed Mooting Competition.
Yeah. Can't remember if we mentioned this on the last one, but all the places are gone.
We did mention it. All the places are gone, and it's such a shame. I always feel bad when people contact us after the fact, but luckily what we can always say is there's more coming, don't worry, there's plenty more opportunities coming in 2025 and beyond. If you don't want to wait for the next competition and you want to start practicing your advocacy right away, what can they do, John?
Join the advocacy club.
Join the advocacy club, absolutely.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. So the segment I've got planned for us today is all about interviews.
Interviews, okay.
Yes. So just to give people a bit of context, the Pupillage Gateway closed last week, I think, because it was when we recorded this last week.
It was, yeah.
When we recorded last week's episode that didn't record, it had just closed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes. So we thought we'd do a little chat with our interview tips and hints. But before we do that, do you want to just, in case there's anyone listening who's at the really early stages of their legal journey that doesn't know what the Pupillage Gateway is, do you want to give a quick explanation, John?
Yeah, brilliant. I will do. So, Pupillage Gateway, I compare it to UCAS. So, I don't know if UCAS is still going, but
I think it is.
It probably is. So, if you've applied to university, it's a very similar system. I think on UCAS you can apply to 5 unis. Gateway, I think you can apply to 12 chambers or something. So you go on, you fill out your application forms, and they get submitted directly through the Gateway to those chambers. Now, some chambers don't recruit through the Gateway, but every chambers has to. I say chambers, it's any organisation that offers pupillage. All have to advertise on the Gateway.
Yeah.
So the idea being it's so that everyone's got a fair chance, everyone knows about all the pupillages that are coming up. So they've all got to be advertised on there. So you go on, you fill in the questions, they get sent out. If I remember rightly, I think there's some generic questions that you just fill in and they go to every chambers.
Okay.
And then each chambers has their own specific questions. If
I
remember, I'm trying to think back now whether it's the generic questions, whether you have to give the same answer for each chamber or whether they're different answers. I can't remember. But then some chambers have their own, so it might be, say if it's a criminal set, why do you want to do criminal law, or family law chambers might say, tell us what you want to change in family law, what have you.
There was a similar portal for applying for training contracts, actually, that rang a bell.
Oh, was
there was, I can't remember what it was called now, but you logged in.
Yeah.
And I think you could have like a profile ready, so it had like all your exam results and all the like work experience you've done. You could like preload it and put it into any application and then just go to the specific questions.
Yeah, that's the kind of deal with this. So that's how the gateway works in a nutshell.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you are lucky enough to get a pupillage interview, then have a listen to this episode and hopefully it will be helpful for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to turn to you, John, first.
Okay.
To give the listeners a nice interview tip.
So I would say practice. I think that's really crucial. So, I talk about when you go into a moot or doing any form of public speaking or whatever, you need to practice. I think an interview is the same. Because, if you go in cold and you've not practiced before, the questions are going to come at you by surprise, and you're not in the habit of formulating answers and things of that nature. So practice, and if you know any barristers, so let's say for example, you've been
on a mini, or you've got a mentor,
or even it could be just let's say you post bar course and a few of your mates have got pupillage there in chambers or whatever. Then of course you'll know barristers at that point. So if you know somebody who's barrister, see if you can get them to give you a mock interview. If not, ask your mum and dad, ask your siblings, ask your friends, because anyone can ask the questions. It's pretty obvious what will come up. Well, I say it pretty obvious. Some questions will be, some questions won't. But you can prepare some of these answers. So why this chambers, why do you want to practice in this particular city, this area of law, whatever it might be. So you can just practice formulating those answers, and even if you don't get the specific question, you're just getting into the habit of speaking to an interviewer and answering them.
Yeah.
And I suppose even if you've not got anyone that can throw those questions at you, just sitting there in your own space, just physically speaking the answers out loud, just get you used to doing so.
You could talk in front of a mirror, you could record yourself and watch it back.
Anything like that. It's always helpful, and it's good just to get some feedback. I mean, I remember going into, I went into a few interviews where I didn't practice and I had shocking interviews. And then, I got to the point where I think it must have been in my second cycle. So a mate of mine who got pupillage right away, he was a first year, second year tenant, whatever. And he came round, asked some questions, and I gave some bad answers. So, he's able to say, I wouldn't quite say that, I wouldn't do this. So it got some constructive feedback there. So that's why I think practice is crucial.
So the first tip from me is have examples ready. So like we say in the world of mooting, everything you say has to be backed up by evidence.
Yeah.
Very, very similar in the world of interviews. So it's no good just to say, yep, I'm great at mooting. You've got to let them know why and give them examples. Because I've been in the advocacy club and I've been practicing mooting for 6 months with my membership. I've taken part in my university's mooting competition. I've done speed moots. I've done this, this and this. Yeah. Have a stream of examples for everything that you say.
Absolutely.
I used to do this all the time for my interviews. Even things like when I was going to interviews at retail, like, little part-time jobs, because it's always stuff around scenario-based questions that's big in the interviews. So I used to have, for example, I know a question's going to come up about teamwork.
Yeah.
So I used to have about 4 different examples of where I've worked well in a team, where I've worked well under pressure, all these different things.
Yeah.
And then you find in the interview itself, even if that exact question doesn't come up, those scenarios that you've got in your head can be tailored to something else.
Oh yeah.
So you will use them, and it's good. As many as you think you'll need, think of more, and you'll be surprised how many examples you've got of you showcasing all these different skills.
Yeah, and you can think laterally as well. I remember when I went for an interview at a job in Primark, and that was quite an intensive process. They had like an online exam I had to do beforehand, and then this really intense interview, just so I could throw some gloves on a shelf and all the rest of it. But there we are. But anyway, I remember in the interview, and said to me, give an example of a time when you've had to work successfully as part of a team, and they're talking about, well, last year I was in a mooting competition and I had to collaborate with my co-counsel, and we had to work out who was doing what part of the research and look for the various precedents and all. And you can just see this interview is like, what is he talking about?
He's made this up.
Only I could bring up mooting in an interview for Primark.
Yeah, so let's say have examples, try and keep them relevant.
Yeah.
And if they are a bit obscene?
Obsequious, maybe.
Whatever. Be prepared to explain them so your interviewer knows what you're talking about. I mean, I know you, John. I'm sure you gave a very lengthy explanation about what mooting was.
And I, if I remember rightly, I'm sure I brought mooting up again in the next question.
Wow. Yeah, that's John done for you. The moot king himself.
The moot king, yeah.
Right, moving on.
So my next tip is do your research. Okay.
Yep.
So obviously do a little bit of homework on the chambers, so know the type of cases that they do. So I remember, I think it must have been a barrister that we had on our Q&A session saying, the chambers website effectively is it's a way of that chambers promoting and advertising themselves, and they'll say a load of things on there. Yeah. But sometimes it might be, they might list a load of areas, and it might be something they've done a handful of, but they're happy to receive more instructions in that area. So when you look at the barristers' profiles, there might not be many barristers that do. Let's say there's something really, really, really obscure. I'm thinking something out here now. So let's say it's a commercial chambers, and you say something to do with aviation law. And they might have had one case on there that just says it on the website, but you look at all the profiles of the barristers and there's no one doing that type of thing. So just check what their regular flow of work is so you can talk about that. And then going beyond that, whatever type of law it is that you say you're interested in, know a little bit about it, know about what's relevant. Are there any particular cases that are hitting the news, anything that's particularly important? So let's say you were interested in, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example.
So I've got one. So when I was leaving Ibn Mitchell, it was just after COVID and the Coronavirus Rent Act was coming out. So every single interview I had, I talked about that because it was a big, significant statute that was going to impact property litigation. So that's one example. If I hadn't known what that was or been able to talk about it, they would be like, that's strange because this has been all over the news for the last 3 months. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. So it's very difficult for you to show that you're interested in that area.
Yes, if you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
And that's a good habit just to have generally, isn't it, outside of the interview world, just to be following the cases that impact the area of law you want to practice in.
Yeah. I had a pretty sly question from someone on a pupillage interview one time. I went for this interview and it must have been the head of chambers or something, says to me, alright, so let's say, John, let's say you're successful, let's say you come with us, and 5-10 years down the line, what 3 types of work do you see yourself doing? And it was a chambers that does all civil type stuff, and I said, classic example, didn't think the answer through, I just spurted answers out without thinking, and I said, I can't remember what the 3 areas were, but one of them included industrial disease. Where that came from, I've no idea. I've never done any, I've never paralegaled in industrial disease. Didn't really have a massive interest.
Maybe you just thought it sounded impressive.
I just thought it sounded impressive because I was doing personal injury and I knew that it was part of personal injury. So I thought, I'll just spout it out there. And this guy goes, oh, okay. He must have been a barrister that does loads of industrial disease stuff. So what's the biggest growth area within industrial disease at the moment? And I'm like, I don't know.
That's a hard question.
I mean, I thought that was a bit of a mean one, but it just the reason I say this is you might get chambers or people on a panel that ask you really mean questions. Yeah. So that's why it's important to, if you're going to say you're interested in something and you want to do something,
you need to have a genuine interest in it.
Well, and not to the extent that you know everything as much as a barrister would, because that's why you're going for a pupillage. You don't know everything.
Well, of course.
But just the core things, know it.
Yeah. So, for example, if you'd genuinely been interested in industrial disease, you would have known a bit about it. So you might have been able to say, "Oh, I'm not sure what the biggest growth area is actually." what I really find interesting is this part of it, and I've been reading this case about it, and they'll still just think, oh, okay. Even if he didn't know the answer, he's still got a genuine interest
you can wing an answer.
in that area of law.
Yeah.
And sometimes they respect you for just saying, I don't know that, but I do know this.
Yeah.
So because you've completely fudged it, that's why you couldn't save yourself.
That's why. And it's a classic example of just speaking too quickly, my mouth working quicker than my brain.
Yeah.
Interestingly, do you want to know what the answer was?
I feel like you've told me this.
Probably have,
Is it sort of about like hearing loss?
Yeah, noise-induced hearing loss.
There we go. Yeah, I've heard that story before, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. So my next tip is all about the actual day itself. And this is a big part that will help you with controlling your nerves.
Yeah.
Making sure you don't get caught out and show up completely flustered. Plan the day, like to a T. Like I'm talking the night before, you want to know exactly what time train you're getting, what time it's going to get you in, how far the walk is, if you're parking, where's the car park, what you're eating for breakfast. Plan the day, because there's nothing worse than if one little thing isn't planned properly or goes wrong. You're in such a panic because your nerves are on like high alert already. Say you plan, I don't know, a runny egg. Maybe don't eat runny eggs on the day, because what if it spills on you and then you've got to go with dirty clothes on. These things are going to make you so stressed.
Yeah.
So I was like always an over planner for stuff like that. I was the one that got there an hour before. I'd walk to the building and go, okay, that's where I've got to go. And then I'd go somewhere else and find somewhere to sit and have a cup of tea and go over my notes. So I knew I wasn't going to get there and be running in all flustered and be stressed out. So plan everything. Over plan. Tip from me.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, when you mentioned the runny egg there, it made me think about years ago when I was a solicitor. And because we used to get cases all over the country, we'd instruct these, sometimes, it'd be in a weird and wonderful part of the country. You have to find the local chambers, ring up, get someone from there. And we got this feedback off a client one time going, oh yeah, this barrister that you sent to court turned up with his breakfast all down his shirt. And not a great look.
Yeah, tip for practice, always have a spare shirt with you. Absolutely, but I know lots of people that do that, even from when I worked in the law firms.
Oh yeah.
Lots of the big partners would have a spare suit or a spare shirt hanging up around.
Harvey Specter does that, apparently.
Well, there you go, and so do people from Irwin Mitchell, because I've seen it.
Ah.
So, like, especially when, now, because it's like dress for your day, so you don't have to come in suited and booted. They could get a call from a client to be like, do you want to, I'm in the area, I happen to be in the area, do you want to meet for a coffee? And if it's a client that expects them to be suited and booted, they're like, oh, I've got a spare suit, I've got a spare shirt. Or maybe they've spilt breakfast down the one they're wearing and they don't want the client to see them. So,
Who knows?
That's a tip for practice.
So, obviously with the bar having a heavy focus on advocacy, the chances are you might get an advocacy exercise or some sort of problem question to do.
Yes.
So, and when I say advocacy, that includes obviously written advocacy. So, in terms of oral advocacy, look at the types of scenarios that might come up. So, classic examples, bail applications and pleas and mitigation. There might be civil submissions as well.
Yeah.
So have a look at YouTube videos. Obviously, we've got a good collection on our YouTube channel that talk about these particular forms of advocacy, how to perform them, and then feeding back into what we said before, practice.
Yes.
And then likewise, if it's going to be a problem type question, speak to other friends who've been for pupillage interviews, see if you can get an idea as to the type of problem questions that can come up, and see if you can find any examples online that you can have a practice go at.
Yeah.
Once again, it's like we were saying before, don't go in cold. If you can have a practice, go for it.
Yeah. And practice it with a timer as well, because some of them might be, probably always time controlled, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Here's a scenario, read it, and you've got 20 minutes to prepare a bail application or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think I only ever had one written exercise, and that obviously had a time limit, because it's like a mini exam, basically.
Yeah.
And the way they did it was kind of, here's a scenario, and then there's 10 questions that stem off the back of that.
Yeah.
With the advocacy exercises, I never had an interview with an advocacy or a legal advocacy exercise anyway, so I don't know whether they come in advance or whether it is, kind of off the cuff. I can understand why, particularly with a bail app, because normally, you'd be doing them where you meet your clients and take your instructions and perform the bail application.
Yeah.
I did have one where it was just a general advocacy thing. It was something like present an argument on why the North is better than the South or something, and I had like 10-15 minutes to put something together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
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 Boom. Yeah, so it's something that will probably come up in a lot of interviews or assessment days, and you might think, oh, there's no way I can prepare for that. But there is, as John says, find examples, watch our YouTube videos. You won't be able to prepare for the exact thing until you've got it. You're not going to know what it is. But if you know already the structure of, let's say, a bail app, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable if they slap you with a bail application exercise to do.
Yeah.
And we've had that feedback, haven't we, saying that the exercises that we cover in the Advocacy Club, shameful plug again, the exercises that we've covered in Advocacy Clubs have come up in interviews. So, yeah, join the Advocacy Club.
This video is brought to you by Speed Mooting. We are an organisation that help aspiring and junior lawyers. We run online and in-person advocacy and mooting competitions. We do online advocacy and public speaking training, and we run lots of other events to assist people on their legal journey. To learn more, visit our website, speedmooting.com.
So, last tip from me is have questions prepared to ask your interviewers. And make sure they're insightful and really, creative questions as well.
Yeah.
Because the basics will probably come out in the interview itself.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I've conducted interviews, things like, your salary, your holiday, this, we give you all that information. So if they're the only questions that you got ready to ask, it's never great to say, oh, I think you've answered everything. So, have some creative ones, but also, ones that you really are interested to know the answer of. And it just impresses your interviewer, makes them think a little bit as well. So things like, so how, they might have told you about themselves, but you can say how long you've been in the chambers for, or what's the most challenging case that you've had. What type of cases can I expect in my second six? Stuff that you really, really want to know the answer to. Because it's never great when you don't have any questions.
No.
But also, if you're asking something just for the sake of it, they'll see right through you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as you say, insightful stuff. So on that regard, as you say, what kind of courts are you going to be going to? What type of advocacy will you be doing? So if it was a criminal one, are you going to get to do Crown Court stuff in your second six? So if you're doing civil, will I get to see any multi-track work in second six, etc.?
Yeah.
Will you have access to more than one supervisor? Even if you're doing a single pupillage, will you get to see little bits and bobs of other type of work?
Yep.
Whatever it is, you can always think of something. But as you say, hey, it just looks good.
It does.
You've got one or two questions.
Yeah. And you could almost use it as an excuse. If there's something you wanted to tell them about and it hasn't come out in the interview, you could try and be sneaky.
Yeah.
So if I'm successful today, I know the start date for this pupillage is X. So I'm planning to continue my work with X, Y, and Z during this time. They're like, oh, okay, didn't know he was doing all that. Is there anything else you can recommend that I do in preparation for the pupillage?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. You can be cheeky with it as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, ask thoughtful and insightful questions is my last tip.
Yeah. So my last piece of advice is be yourself. So I always talk about, particularly at the Advocacy Club, saying, don't try and put this voice on. It's very easy in advocacy to think you've got to put on this fake accent to sound like a barrister or what have you. Be yourself, and the same applies to interview. Be yourself. Don't try and pretend to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
If you come across as authentic, that's the best way. Puts you at ease, gives you the best chance of giving you best performance, and also, if you're not authentic in interview, then, and let's say you get the pupillage on that basis, you're making life hard for yourself, because when you do eventually become yourself, when you start the pupillage, when you're in chambers, you might find it's not the place for you. You might find
you might not fit. Your real self might not fit.
So just be yourself, and I think stemming from that, to try and take some pressure off yourself. A lot of it's very easy to think, well, I've got this interview, this is my only chance, this is my only shot. If I don't get this, I'm never getting one. And it just puts too much pressure on yourself. So you've got to kind of relax, realise that if you've got an interview, you're going to get more interviews. If this one doesn't pay off, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. And
I think that's how I ended up getting my training contract. I went in, I was just myself, and I just relaxed. I said, you know what, I've Well, actually got to the point where I said, well, this year, if I don't get a training contract or a pupillage, I'm
doing something else.
I'm doing something else. You know, I've given blood, sweat, and all the rest of it to the law. If this doesn't pan out, it's, you know, it wasn't for me, kind of thing. So that's because I got to that point.
Probably helped you, didn't it?
I think it helped me because it made me so much more relaxed. It was, yeah, I've done this. I feel I'm good enough for it. If a chambers or a law firm doesn't, so be it. Yeah. And that's the attitude. You don't want to be nonchalant. You don't want to be, you know, get to the point that you don't care, but you just need to be a lot more relaxed.
Yes.
I think you got to the same point as well, didn't you?
Yeah. I was working in compliance. I was being promoted a few times, and I realised it was quite a good professional career in compliance. And in terms of pay, you know, it wasn't that far behind a lawyer. So I was thinking, gosh, I might just stick with compliance and give up. And it probably did help.
Yeah.
I remember it reminds me of when I did my driving test as well. I was so nervous, and I thought I'd failed instantly. So I did the whole test thinking, well, I failed. So it helped. Like, the nerves were gone because I was like, what does it matter?
Yeah.
And I passed.
Yeah. The way I got through my mindset for my driving test was, I kind of, because there's a lot of pressure riding on it, isn't there? Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, forget that it's a test, just think about it as another lesson, you're just on a drive. You know, so forget that, you know, imagine that the examiner sat next to you as your instructor and you're just doing a regular drive. Yeah. And once I got to that point, it kind of, helped me.
So imagine the person that's interviewing you is just a person having a chat.
Having a chat, you know, it's a client that you're just giving advice to.
Yeah. And as John says, you know, stay resilient, be prepared. You might not get the very first interview you go to. And it's not always a reflection on you, you know, it's a big numbers game. Like, the ratio from people that apply to people that get interviews is huge. Yeah. The ratio of people that get interviews to how many pupillage there are, that's still a big gap, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't give everyone a pupillage.
No, and that's part of the problem. You know, it's a game of attrition. Absolutely it is. And, you know, I know so many people who just never made it. Very, very talented people. People who, if they'd have been given an opportunity, would have made fantastic barristers or solicitors. Yeah. And just for one reason or another, just never quite got that lucky stroke. Yeah. And I think even the same applies to you and I, Hayley. You know, you think about how long it took us to break into this profession. Yeah. And, you know, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I would say we're both very good lawyers. I would go that far to say that. And it took us so long, you know, and I think in both of our cases we had one individual that gave us that chance, that lucky break that we needed. If it wasn't for that, we may not have got that lucky break. And we'd never got into the law, would never have qualified, would never have become barristers and solicitors. Crazy, so isn't it? Don't think that because you get rejections on paper or an interview, it's any reflection on you being particularly bad, or, you know, you don't deserve to be in this profession. It's, well, obviously there's subjective elements to it. You know, you're going before a panel. If they don't like you, what can you do? And to a point, it's a combination of hard work, talent, and luck, and you need the three to come together. Yeah,
and a lot of people, when there is a panel, they do like a scoring system, don't they? And that's, you know, it's someone's opinion on how high you score on one thing. Someone might give you a 10. Someone else might say, well, I didn't quite like that. I'm only going to give them an 8. Yeah. And I've seen it before, because it's the same with training contract assessment days. I remember there was a partner in a firm I worked with, I won't name the firm, but he was fighting tooth and nail for this person who'd worked internally with the firm for a long time, wanted them to get the training contract, and the recruitment team was just like, they didn't score high enough. They've got to come back next year and try again. And he was like, it's ridiculous. Like, I've seen this person work. They're going to be a fantastic lawyer. They're already like the best paralegal we've got. And it's like, they just didn't score high enough. Like, you can't get past the red tape sometimes. It can be frustrating, but there's systems in place, and you just got to wait. Just bide your time. You'll get there. Yeah. And I remember, as you say, John, it took us so long to break in. Once you're qualified, your doors are just like wide open.
That's exactly it, isn't it? It's just all about getting that piece of paper, and that's why, you know, to a point, you know, you obviously don't go somewhere where you're going to be miserable, but, you know, to a point, it's about not being too picky, just getting that piece of paper, getting yourself qualified, and as you say, doors are open then. Yeah. You know, you think about it with myself, you know, I couldn't get a training contract or pupillage, you know, if if my life depended on it. Well, obviously I did in the end, but you know, for many, many, many years. And you know, taking the CPS as an example, I think I went through their training application, pupillage application, whatever you call it, several times, couldn't get taken on.
Yeah.
And then got qualified, and within, I don't know, a couple of years of being qualified, put an application in for a senior crime prosecutor. Come on in, John.
Yeah. No, it's like me as well. I must have applied for every firm. If it was a top 50, I had to apply for it and got rejected so many times by so many firms. And then when I decided to relocate and leave here with Mitchell, I had a lot of interviews, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I got job offers from every interview I went on.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like, you people have rejected me so many times, but the fact that I'm now like qualified, it gets me in front of the right people, and you don't have to jump through all those hoops anymore because you're not competing with that sheer number of people.
Yeah, and I think also it's because once you've got that piece of paper, and then you've got your caseload from when you qualified, you go, look, here is the proof that I am that good.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem is when you're applying for a training contract or a pupillage, you haven't got that behind you. You haven't got all these case wins and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that's what makes the job quite easy. You know, the job of convincing someone why you're that good, that easy.
Yes.
So you know, the message I want to get out there to people is, it's hard. It takes a long time. Remember that, you know, if you want to come into this profession, you're going to be in this profession for many, many decades.
Yes.
If you want to be, that is. So it's not a sprint to get here. You know, I kind of, you know, did the classic thing of going to Unit 18, straight through the courses, all the rest of it, and you think, oh, I've got to get qualified by the time I'm 23, 24. And you think it's the end of the world if you didn't get there. I'm now 34. I still feel young. Still feel I've got all this time ahead of me. And you know, I didn't qualify as a barrister until 33. Didn't qualify as a solicitor until I was 27.
Yeah.
You know, if you'd have told me that when I was 22, I'd have thought, wow, I was ancient when qualifying. But no, it takes time. It can take time, and don't worry about that.
No, resilience is a skill that every qualified lawyer will have because of everything they've been through to qualify.
Yeah.
So be resilient, you know, stick with it, and best of luck to everyone that does get interviews, and we hope this episode's been helpful to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, let's bring it to an end.
We've got a busy time coming up. We've both got more work to do.
Yep.
So, let's wrap it up. I've enjoyed recording. Have you enjoyed recording, Hayley?
I've enjoyed recording it, John.
If you're still listening at this point, let's have down below, when you comment resilience.
Resilience, yeah.
With like the gym arm thing.
Yes, the strong arm.
Strong arm. And also, episode 47, we're back on Formula 1 next week. Okay. So, if you know who that is, or you think you know who it is, drop a comment below.
And if you have a moment, take a second to like and subscribe this episode. It really helps us and just keeps us going week on week.
It certainly does.
Because we know you're liking our stuff and you're listening.
And if you've got even more time than that, so let's say you've got an extra 5 seconds on top, if you've got if you're listening on Spotify, get the phone in your hand. There should be 3 little dots. Press the button.
Yeah.
And give us a 5-star rating.
Please.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.